Preceding and following the Civil War, South Dakota became the focus of construction of posts associated with the fur trade and also military forts for the westward expansion of the country. A number of these forts and fur trading posts served to gradually force the Native American inhabitants out of the region, thus gaining a foothold for the federal government on lands expanding westward toward the Rocky Mountains. Historical archaeology can complement or conflict with archaeological evidence from a particular site, depending on the accuracy and bias of the written record. Where historical accounts are simply lists and monetary records, archaeology can add hard evidence, revealing detail as to what life was like in these remote regions of the northern plains as westward expansion occurred. Outlined here is a brief chronology of Euro-American settlement of the northern plains. The influx of travelers, traders, and military personnel began to secure lands and routes through the region. Fort Pierre Chouteau quickly became the most strategic post in the western department of the American Fur Company and shipped beaver pelts, deerskins, and buffalo hides on to European and Eastern markets. Every site across the U.S. is given a number, which is made up of the order the state joined the Union, 2 letters for the county, and another number indicating in which order the site was discovered. Several features were identified and recorded, but not fully excavated in the interests of preservation. Archaeology is a destructive field. By its nature, we destroy the context of what we were studying as we dig it up. Nails, glass, buttons, metal fragments, and other artifacts were recovered during investigations. A final report and artifact inventory has not yet been completed for Fort Pierre Chouteau. The fort is located in Lyman County, approximately 10 miles from Chamberlain, South Dakota. Identified during an archaeological survey and approximately the place the post would have been situated based on historical documents regarding trade in the region. Fort Lookout Trading Post 2 was constructed on the remains of the French Fur Trading Company's original fort. Remains of the original fort construction would have been salvaged by soldiers of the nearby military fort and Native Americans, leaving little evidence of the original fort complex. These are images from the 1951 archaeological excavation. Note the line of charred timbers from the palisade wall. Charred wood was not recovered, rather only ash, suggesting that the building had collapsed prior to burning and thereby was consumed more entirely by the fire. A small room at the south end, equipped with a wooden plank floor, was identified, and chalkstone used in part of hearth construction, as a fireplace footing was also exposed during the excavations. Archaeological features guide the excavation and allow a reconstruction of activities that illuminate the day-to-day lifeway of the inhabitants. These archaeological traces allow expanding the historic written record by documenting mundane daily tasks. Plant and animal remains clarify the diets of the inhabitants, clearly showing the utilization of natural resources available in the area of the fort. These products enhanced the regular diets provided. Sometimes trade beads are able to be traced to specific ships or years of import from Europe to the East Coast, and further tracked as they make their way inland. This kind of tracking relies on visible and distinguishable company brands, as well as unique manufacturing characteristics such as a rare color or shape. None of the beads present here were suitable for such detailed analysis, but are still useful for archaeologists. Clay pipes, in a way similar to trade beads, can provide detailed information regarding trade routes. In the case of Fort Lookout 2, while manufacturing marks and initials were visible, none were distinct enough as to tie them to specific companies or time frames. 2 rim sherds had been shaped into rough discs, likely shaped by historic Native Americans making gaming pieces. Gaming discs such as these are typically involved in games of chance. A tortoiseshell ceramicware specimen was recovered that was probably associated with the fort occupation. Buttons provide important clues once again to the extensive trade networks and manufacturers. Due to changing styles, button can be excellent temporal or time markers for dating an occupation period. Cartridge cases provide direct evidence for the type of military weapons being utilized during the fort occupation period. Frequently they help denote where a target range was located within fort property. The presence of a catlinite pipe bowl fragment indicates Native American presence at the fort. Catlinite is a type of argillite, usually brownish-red in color, which occurs in a matrix of Sioux quartzite. After the Sioux Uprising of 1862, in which 100 settlers and 60 Sioux were killed, the 80 men of the 6th Iowa Cavalry were sent west to maintain order rather than into combat units in the Civil War. Fort James was established in 1865 at the end of the Civil War as the military expanded the fort complexes westward. Fort James was unique by being constructed of stone, utilizing a natural outcropping of quartzite in the James River Valley. Fort James was decommissioned in 1866 after less than a year of service due to financial problems experienced by the federal government following the Civil War.
Here in the corner trench, we're making quick progress with the machine. We've carefully dug down to reveal the outside of the wall, and we've stopped just above the ground surface as it was 150 years ago.
We're pulling this back right here. You can see how it's all mottled with the ash from the fire. So we're probably in the late 1860s right here. And you can see the beautiful masonry here, how all the courses of stone are laid down. It's beautiful.
This film clip provides a segment of the Time Team America PBS broadcast of an archaeological excavation at Fort James. The special aired in July of 2009. Initial archaeological work focused on clearing vegetation from wall lines which were visible at the surface. Geophysical surveys and magnetometers were used to determine the location of subsurface features prior to excavation, specifically locating a stables which was not depicted in the initial historical plans for the fort. Burned remnants corroborate stories that the fort had burned down in 1868. The portion of wall excavated during the Time Team America investigation was part of the enlisted men's barracks. Original plans had set the dimensions of the fort at 266 by 200 feet, but excavation of the southern wall revealed it was 166 feet, short of either dimension, and revealing that the fort was not constructed as its original plans had laid out. Sophisticated ground-penetrating equipment was utilized during the filming of the Time Team America program on Fort James. This equipment allows archaeologists to focus their excavation strategies, thus enhancing the success of investigations.
Like that.
Archaeologists like privies because they are often places where people throw things away, or where we can find traces of what they ate. The problem is, bottle collectors like them too. Mike worries that this area may have been looted. It's hard to see, so we're going to use the machine to clear away the overgrowth to make it easier to work here.
If this had been looted before, would they have taken everything or just stuff that they thought was interesting, or what?
It's really hard to tell. One of the big items that people try to collect are bottles because they're something that is very saleable. So it's one of the things that we're trying very hard to try to discourage. I mean, they're bottles. If they're taken out of here, there's no context. But if we know that these bottles, let's say from this location, were associated directly with the occupation period of Fort James, that completely changes it because it tells us a great deal about the habits of both the civilians, the enlisted, and the officer people that are, involved with one of these kind of forts.
Julie's going to excavate this area, and believe it or not, she's looking forward to digging a toilet. Over here in Chelsea's trench, we're exposing the wall of the barracks. Her team has found another very revealing artifact.
It says golden bitters. Yeah. Olden bitters, probably golden. I don't know. So this is like this, and then this would be the base.
Yeah, definitely.
This would be the base. The thicker's on the bottom. See this panel? This is a recessed panel, we call it. I mean, this is a big old bottle of bitters.
I know, right?
This is a great find, and tonight we'll be able to do some research on the internet to find out more about it.
Portions of the roof were not recovered, but from sketches made while the fort was occupied, historians know the roof had a slight pitch to it as an architectural feature. Specimens of lead were also recovered, which may be waste material from bullet production, or abandoned bullets that melted when the building burned. A specimen identified as a picket pin was recovered in the enlisted barracks area. Every cavalry member would have had a personal picket pin to tether their horse while traveling. Fort Randall is located in Gregory County on the south side of the Missouri River. Fort Randall was the first permanently established military post in South Dakota dating to 1856. Fort Randall was officially abandoned by the military in 1890. The chapel was also built in 1856. 2 windstorms and a bolt of lightning destroyed the roof, but the ruins were stabilized in 1953. Following the fort's abandonment in 1890, 67 graves were recorded as having been removed and reburied at Fort Leavenworth in Kansas in 1893. Adequate records were not kept from the beginning of Fort Randall, and the first 22 buried individuals are listed as unknown. The original graves were marked with wooden headboards which burned in a prairie fire in 1891. Burials not listed in historical documents were located through aerial photography, resistivity surveying, contour mapping, coring, and excavation, and these methods were also employed to verify information present in cemetery plans stored in the old Army and Navy portion of the National Archives in Washington, D.C. The original footpaths and picket fence were able to be reestablished following the archaeological investigations. The Fort Randall Cemetery has been recommissioned with new wooden headboards marking the graves. Combining detailed archaeological investigation and historic documents has demonstrated here the value of archaeology to scientific investigation. The cemetery has now been recommissioned with the original path and fence lines, as well as new grave markers and a registry where individuals can look up those interred. Trade of beaver skins, deer hides, bison hides with white traders for glass beads and European farming equipment drastically changed Native American material culture. The influx of European trade goods, coupled with the reintroduction of the horse, significantly changed Native cultures, causing them to become dependent on trade goods. The cultural lifeways of the Native peoples in the New World were altered forever.